Hello and welcome to today's episode. We are mixing things up this week. So I mentioned last podcast that I did that I was probably going to go in a different direction this week. I figured for the next years from like 2021 to 2025 that we've seen all the way through those years, that I would let them simmer a little bit more before I started going more into just what happened in those years, as far as gaming goes. So wanted to go in a different direction and also just to kind of mix things up for myself, keep things fresh a bit as I'm doing this. And so what I ended up settling on was to do some kind of like a retrospective slash sort of review on specific games that I've selected. So for the next several weeks, we'll see how this goes. But my plan is to do again like some kind of a deep dive into a game that it's kind of a combination of a game that I feel was really important to the video game industry overall, was pretty popular, sales wise and critically, and then also just a game that I have some kind of nostalgia for, or a game that I just really appreciate. And so some of them aren't going to be completely hit the mark on all those three things there, right? But it's I just feel like they're games that, for one reason or another, kind of a combination again that had a big impact culturally, but then at the same time, just for me specifically. And some of them, that impact that it had culturally was going to be a little bit more widespread, and some others maybe not as much. But I still felt that what they did, though, to the gaming industry provided some kind of help push the medium forward in one way, shape, form, or another. So I figured I'd start off the first episode with Super Mario World, and I was thinking about going further back, like maybe even in the third generation. Like I was thinking maybe like something like the original Super Mario Brothers or even Super Mario Brothers 3. But I figured I'd start here. I always feel that the golden age of gaming really started in the year 1991, and so I figured I'd start off with two games that sort of helped really push the industry forward, and that was Super Mario World and also Sonic the Hedgehog. Now, Super Mario World came out in 1990 and then Sonic the Hedgehog in 1991, but I'll get more into that there. But that's what we're going to be talking about here as far as for the main meat of the podcast. But other than that, though, the introduction will still be the same. So we'll do our Rolly of Gaming segment. And then wanted to go over some information on modern gaming stuff. As always, right, there's been some pretty cool information that has come out. And so wanted to share that there a bit. But let's get into the Rolly of Gaming segment here. And so got 7 games. And so again, if you're new here, what I do is I have an Excel sheet that I've been just adding a bunch of games onto. And usually these games that I have are games that I have some kind of an access to, whether if I own them or I have them on just various emulation devices that I have. And I'll select 7 games, so 1 day per week. And so then in daily, I will post up some gameplay segments or a snippet of whatever game I selected on my YouTube shorts for channel Arcade Amigo, and also on TikTok for also Arcade Amigo. The purpose of this is just to give a bit of information out there to anybody that might be wanting to research for like maybe a new game to play or maybe relive some nostalgia. And so that way I'm talking a bit about it for what I know of the game, maybe give it a little mini review if it's a game I'm familiar with. And then also, like I said, right, I'll have about a minute to 2 minutes or so gameplay segments on my YouTube channel there and TikTok as well. So starting off with the first game, though, is for Super Return of the Jedi. So this is a follow up from a game that we talked about, let's see, not like about a week and a half ago or so for Super Star Wars. So on the Super Nintendo, the original Star Wars movies had a game each for the original movies. So Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. So this is the third one. And I don't think I've ever touched this one. I've played Super Star Wars before. I think I maybe booted up Empire Strikes Back at one point or so, but this one I've never played. But it seems to be kind of more of the same, where basically it's a kind of a side-scrolling action running gun slash platforming game, and you visit a lot of the different set pieces from the movies, and they're known to be very hard games. So kind of keep that in mind, right? If you're going into these games, but they definitely bring out the spirit of the movies, and by that I mean that at least for its time, the 2D 16-bit graphics, it does a pretty good job of mimicking the set pieces from the movies. And the music and sound effects are also pretty spot on too, right? Again, for being on cartridge. So definitely did a good job there. And it varies up the gameplay too by having like some mode 7 segments on it. At least I know with the first two it did, and I want to say like this one, for example, I know it has like some Mode 7 segments on it. But yeah, it'll be interesting capturing some footage for this. I feel like these games should get a re-release, as they definitely paid homage well to the original trilogy of the movies. And so, but I'm sure with the licensing and all, it's probably kind of a pain in the butt to get the license to do these games again. But it would be pretty cool though to see some kind of a re-release of them, because they did do a re-release of Super Star Wars. I know it's on the PlayStation 4, uh, but but then I never saw that it got another release elsewhere. So I don't know. It's kind of weird why that one got a release but not the others. But yeah, but Super Return of the Jedi though, and actually I'm actually kind of curious about this because I don't know. I want to say that I think Return of the Jedi might be my favorite movie in that original trilogy. Empire Strikes Back is amazing, and probably the way the movie's structured and all, it probably is the best one. But I just love the final fight with Luke and Vader, the space dogfight at the end, the whole Ewoks and all. I think that's cool too. So I don't know. I think Return of the Jedi might be my favorite. Either way, though, we'll check out that game. But the next game on the list, and another game that starts with Super, is Super Thunderblade. And so this is the Genesis port that came out, I believe, I'm pretty sure in 1989 when the Sega Genesis launched here in the United States. And, I was a big fan of the Thunderblade in the arcades. So Thunderblade came out, I want to say, I think in 1987. And so by this time, I was intimidated to play arcade games at first for some reason or the other. I'm not sure why. I was a pretty shy kid. But eventually, though, I did get the courage to play arcade games. And the first one that I ever played was um, Bubble Bobble. But then eventually I started playing a few more games. And so this one I would have played at some point. I remember because I was intimidated to get into some of the Sega arcade cabinets where it was like a sit down cabinet, like for example Afterburner and I think even Outrun. But this one, the one that I played, I think it does have a sit down cabinet version of it, but the one that I played was like an upright cabinet where it still has like the kind of like the joystick that kind of makes it feel like you are actually in a helicopter, but it was still an upright cabinet. And the graphics just outstanded me in this. And I mean, it was still using that kind of sprite scaling technique that the Sega arcade games had. Sega went through a few different arcade boards, and I forgot if this was like a more updated one from like what we saw now and like Outrun and Space Area and such. But it still looked really impressive at the time. And what was cool about it is that so you start off with a top-down perspective, and then eventually it kind of scales down, and so you're looking now behind your helicopter, and and at the time, movies like Top Gun and Thunder Fox, I think it was called, were pretty popular. So it was kind of cool getting to kind of experience like the action that you would see in those movies. And but again, the graphics were just something that truly impressed me a lot. And so to get a home port of this, it was pretty unheard of back then. At least something that was really accurate to the arcade. So on the Sega Master System, my cousins got the Thunderblade port on that system there, and it was all right. It was fun, and I remember borrowing that game from my cousins quite a bit. But the whole time I'm thinking, I was like, it's just not like the arcade, and but still, it was fun for what it was. So then when the Sega Genesis came out, I was hoping that it would be a lot more closer to the arcade. And while it is a step up from the Master System version, it's still not quite the arcade version, though. And so, which is the game we're talking about here. I mean, you still get more or less the same setup where you start down in kind of a top-down perspective. Or actually, do you? Or do you start? No, I think you start off just like behind the helicopter. Actually, in this one, but and then it goes vice versa. I forgot, but basically, it's the 3D effects on this. I mean, for the time, it's okay. It's really choppy though, and so because of that, it kind of makes it hard to not only maneuver your helicopter around, but also target your enemies. But it's still pretty fun though overall. And at the end of each stage, right, you take on some kind of a boss, and that's where it does get into a top-down perspective. But I don't recall if this one had like maybe an extra level or so. I'm not sure, but either way though, it's an interesting game, I guess, for trying to be Sega trying to do their thing where where they were bringing the arcade experience home, because that's sort of how the Genesis advertised itself at first. Because again, this is before Sonic, and so Sega, while they had a lot of great arcade games, they were trying to rely on those ports, right, to give Sega some relevancy in the market against like Nintendo. And unfortunately, it wasn't quite enough though. But either way, though, I mean, it was still pretty fun though to play this version. And I remember this version here. I used to play at this Wheels and Wings place, which was sort of a it's kind of a shady place, but it was sort of like a billiards and arcade sort of establishment that was there in my hometown where I grew up in. They didn't serve any alcohol, but I remember people smoking there a lot. And the owner had a section off to the side of the building where there was like chairs and a TV and a game console. So like the TurboGrafx, the Super Nintendo, and the Genesis and the Nintendo. And you pay so much money, and I think it buys you like a certain amount of time of whatever game you wanted to play because they had a decent amount of games there. So it was a pretty it was a pretty cool place. Um, and I remember playing Thunderblade there, Super Thunderblade, along with like Ghouls and Ghosts and Whip Rush, and even I think I played Bonk's Adventure there too, also on the TurboGrafx. But anyways, not a bad port, but definitely not amongst the better Sega arcade ports. So for their home systems. Excuse me. But next up, though, is a game that I really want to play, and actually, I'm really actually in checking out some gameplay on this because I don't know a whole lot about it. I just know that from what I've heard about this game, people really seem to be interested in it, and it seems like right up my alley. And that's for Near Automata. My understanding of this game is that it kind of switches between genres a lot. So it's almost like a shooter, and then it turns into like a hack and slash game. But the story to it and the atmosphere and everything is what people really rave about. Also, that it seems to be kind of along the lines of like something that you would find from like Team Eco. So like the people that do the Eco or Ico, however you pronounce that, in Shadow of the Colossus game. But then also like Panzer Dragoon. And so the moment that they mentioned those series there, that seems like this game got influence from, it has made me very interested in this one, and also the other one, near Replicant. I believe this one's the sequel. I'm not sure, but I'm very curious to check this game out. I have a feeling that after I check it out, I might get the inkling to try to play it. You know, sometimes you just know about a game, right? Even if you've never played it, and it might be a combination of the developer or maybe certain trusted reviewers, right, that have a very similar taste as yours, that's really praised the game, or just something about the look of the game. Like you just know you're going to connect with that game, and that's how I feel about Nier Automata. Having again never really played it or even booted it up, and just a few videos that I've seen of it, right? But yeah, I have a feeling I would like this game, so this might give me the inspiration to give it more of a shot. But the next up, though, is for Dragon Quest, the original one, or Dragon Warrior, as it was known here in the United States. But we'll go with Dragon Quest, though, since now it's known as Dragon Quest. And I picked this game on this specific day that I'll put it up. Let's see, this will be on Monday to Wednesday, as it'll be May 27th, and that's Dragon Quest Day. So I figured, just to pay homage to that day, to have this game as the game that I'll show off right on my channel. And so the original Dragon Quest game, I never played this game back in the day. So it was Dragon Quest in Japan, came out in 1986 from Yuji Horii, and under published, developed and published by Enix, or maybe like a sub company of theirs, or where did that work? With artwork from Akira Toriyama, and then music by I believe Koichi. And so they set the foundation for what Dragon Quest would be going forward, and not only Dragon Quest games, but really RPGs in general, because RPGs were starting to become a thing in the United States already. And so Yuji Horii actually got a lot of inspiration from like games like Wizardry and Ultima. And so then this was sort of his take on it, but with a bit of a Japanese flair to it, right? So, for example, like with Akira Toriyama's work, that really makes the character stand out and gives it that really kind of like a Japanese feel to it. And it introduced a lot of things that we going forward we would know in RPGs, like turn-based battle systems, experience points, hit points, magic points. I mean, those were all things that were already in some of the earlier RPGs, but it kind of did it in a way where it was a bit more streamlined and a bit more user friendly. And I mean, the game is very difficult though, but as far as maneuvering through the systems, controlling the character and all, it was a lot more simplified from what it seems like, where PC RPGs at the time were a bit more complex, at least from my understanding. But even then, though, it was still a bit. There were still some things to work out, though, right? So, for example, to open a door, you actually had to select the command to open a door, as opposed to just pressing a button. So things that would be improved on later on, right? But so this is kind of the early start. But in this one, it's pretty basic, where you play warrior Airdrake, I believe is his name, and you're you have some kind of a lineage to Chosen One. Dragon Quest 1, 2, and 3. Basically, Dragon Quest 3 is actually the first one, and then the first one is the second one, and then the second one is the third one. uh, but uh, um, but this one here, you're just one character, so you don't have a party on this one, and so you're just out to stop the evil Dragon Lord, I believe, the Dragon Lord, right? Evil Dragon Lord or something. And yeah, I mean, this original one is that I'm talking about here is very basic and definitely it's a bit archaic to go back to if you just weren't around in those days. But again, it was really revolutionary on just establishing RPGs as a whole, right? Eventually here in Japan and then here in the United States eventually. But it didn't happen right away though, because in Japan, Dragon Quest was a big hit. The game came out, I think, like 2 or 3 years later here in the United States, and it didn't really take off. So Nintendo, what they did was that they gave away a copy of Dragon. Well, it was known as Dragon Warrior here in the States because of trademark, right, or copyrights, right? Some other property or company had the trademark the name Dragon Quest already for at least for a while, um, and so. But yeah, it didn't sell that well, so Nintendo gave away some of these copies to people that subscribe to Nintendo Power, is my understanding of it. Just kind of trying to get people to get into RPGs as they were getting popular in Japan. But if it wasn't a PC RPG, they just weren't really doing that well here. And but this is sort of like the godfather of JRPGs, though. Uh, and so wanted to at least talk about the game here, especially on its what is it now? It's 'cause I think it's its 40th. Is it its 40th anniversary? I think it is. Yeah, 40th anniversary. That's insane. And the crazy thing is about this series, though, is that while yes, there's been improvement to graphics, to the way you maneuver through the menus, obviously, and play mechanics and whatnot, but it also hasn't really strayed too far from the formula. I mean, every Dragon Quest game, it's fairly traditional, right? But that's what's kept the series at least alive in the hearts of fans. Is that it is kind of a more of a pure experience, right? Because it doesn't really change up the formula too much, outside of again the story, the obvious aesthetics and music and whatnot. But it's still a turn-based RPG. You're getting experience points, getting coins to better, get better equipment and all. And so, and this is where it all started. So there's even though this game can feel archaic to go back to, definitely set the stage though for many games that we would love to this day. But next up though is Quake, and so Quake was, is it from ID Software? But it was sort of like I guess like you can say like an evolution of Doom, because for a few different reasons. Well, the gameplay, it's a bit more slower pace, I guess you can say. Because I mean, there's still enemies, you're still frantically moving around right in the first person perspective, right, shooting demons and whatnot. But there's like less enemies though on screen. At least from what I played of it, the everything is more 3D now. And it was a pretty impressive at the time, right when this game came out, at least graphically, which would have been, oh, I don't know, 1995 or so. The Quake version that I'm really familiar with is the Sega Saturn version, because again, I had the Sega Saturn back then, and they actually had a decent port of the on the Sega Saturn. So I might actually show off that one as I'm recording footage, just because again, that's just the one I'm familiar with. But again, it was really popular on PC, and then eventually got ports also on the PlayStation, I believe, and I think maybe the Nintendo 64. But just Quake in general, though, right? It continued on with introducing gamers to like online gameplay as well too for the time, and just overall, it's a very dark kind of game, and just I mean, another cool game where you go to, I mean, I don't know if you're in hell or what, but it kind of feels like it. It's been a while since I played this game, well, at least the Saturn version, but just a cool boomer shooter, as they're called now. Probably one of the more original boomer shooters, but again, was revolutionary for great gameplay and also its level design and also the graphics, right, where everything now was 3D modeled. The next up, though, is for Road Blasters. And so this game was pretty popular in the arcades. At least I remember back in the day seeing it a lot. And so you're this car set sort of in a futuristic setting, and only it's kind of like a racing combat. But you have like a gun on top of the roof of the car, and you're shooting down enemies. And the scaling on it, I remember, was pretty impressive at the time. So it was one of those like I remember seeing this game in so many arcades, and it was pretty impressive to look at. And I think the Genesis got a pretty decent port of it too, so that might be the version I show off, or maybe the arcade. I'll see what I have access to. But yeah, I mean, I remember playing it in the arcades back then. I could never really get far because arcade games are so damn hard, and I only had like a handful of quarters with me at any given time. And but it was a fun game though, and I love the futuristic setting to it. The backdrops are always kind of cool. I'm a sucker for like cyberpunk stuff, but yeah, if you just want like a cool sort of like a I don't think it's like a racing game. It's just more like a driving game where you're shooting up other cars, and this is definitely one that you might have a fun time playing. And last up here is for Horizon Forbidden West. And so this game, it's one of. I mean, I'd have to think about it a little bit, but I want to. I mean, I this might be like the most visually impressive looking game I've ever seen. The game is stunning to look at. It's a sequel to Horizon Zero Dawn. This game though came out in 2022, and it was a cross-platform game where it also came out on the PlayStation 4, but on the PlayStation 5, especially on the PlayStation 5 Pro, it looks outstanding. I mean, the graphics to it, the color, the resolution, the frame rate, all looks top notch. I mean, I would say like if you're wanting to show off like what video games can look like right now, this is probably one of the better showpiece of a game that's out there. I mean, it's the environments look amazing. Again, the color usage, and I mean, kind of almost something like on like reminiscent of like some of the, not exactly that it looks like it, but just the imagination and all of like, and that's really colorful with a lot of like the interesting, almost alien like foliage and all of something like Avatar. Um, Aloy herself, and all the character models look really great, and the also because the enemies in this are like these sort of like robotic mammals and dinosaurs, and especially when you come across one that looks like something like a T Rex or so, all the little intricate detail in their robotic forms and all looks outstanding. I mean, it's like right on par, if not maybe even better in some cases, and more detailed than like what you would see in the Michael Bay Transformers movies. And what's cool is that they almost have some similar sound effects, and that's the other thing too, that the sound design on this game is insane, right? So definitely a showpiece of a game, right, when it comes to that, and it plays pretty good too. The first Horizon Zero Dawn was really impressive. I felt that the gameplay was cool on trying to take down some of these, huge robotic dinosaurs, and with your kind of primitive weapons like a bow and arrow and tripwires and things like that. But what makes it fun though is that as you're trying to take down some of these huge behemoths of robotic enemies, is the strategy involved in them. So it kind of makes you feel like you are on a hunt, right, for to take some of these down. And so that's always a lot of fun. It can be challenging though, but it's definitely fun. And the sequel continues that, just with more of a variety of like different robots, or actually I should say, 'cause I've got about maybe a little under halfway would be my guess on how far I've gone in that game. And at least from what I played, it's definitely got more, or I'm sorry, different enemies than in the first one. I just don't know maybe if it has more, but anyways, I mean, it definitely continues on from what the first one was doing. This is becoming like a popular IP for Sony now, as they've been trying to spin off on other things on this franchise here. Like they got the VR game, and then they're doing some kind of live service game on it. But the first one was really excellent. This one, I mean, I guess it plays a little bit better. It looks better, but it doesn't feel too much different. And then the story, I like the mystery in the story of the first one, where a part of it all is that why are there like these huge robotic enemies and dinosaurs, and that are like that look like dinosaurs and mammals and such, uh, but you're in this world that is very primitive, right? Where you're fighting with bow and arrows and rocks and things like that. So that was a part of the allure of the first one, and I thought that the story to that one was pretty good overall, right? Like I was like, okay, that's interesting, that's cool, right? Once I saw it to its conclusion, this one, I mean, again, like I started playing it, I got a little over, I'm about halfway or so, give or take. But I kind of stopped playing it though because I was like, well, the story's not really hooking me that much, and the gameplay is fine enough. But I think my mistake was that I tried playing this game like right after the first one, and sometimes when I play a really beefy game like that, and then I immediately try to go to like its sequel, I'm like, I get kind of burnt out after a while. It's like, maybe I'll come back to it after a while, and that's what happened with this one here. But I definitely want to go back to it and beat it, even if the story isn't quite as engaging. Everything else about it, though, is truly stunning to look at, to listen to, and to play. And so, yeah, definitely one of the better games out there as far as like technically what video games can achieve.
Well, let's get now into some modern gaming news and information. And so, just starting off, we had some pretty big releases this week. And so, starting off with Forza Motorsport, no, I'm sorry, Forza Horizon 6. And so, was able to download that. So, I subscribed up for Game Pass at least for a month as I wanted to check out this game. And yeah, it's pretty good. It's I didn't put a whole lot of time into it, but did do a race. Did the first little introduction area, and then did a few races. And it definitely seems like a racing game I could really get into. So this is probably going to be the one that I'm going to have in my rotation for a while now for racing games. There's just seems to be a ton of stuff to do on it. The little story mode that it has at the beginning, it's cool enough. But really, it's just exploring the map and all, and just how detailed this world is. It's pretty incredible. And so I'm playing it on the Xbox Series X on performance mode. And yeah, I mean, it looks stunning. I saw the breakdown. I think I talked about it last episode where Digital Foundry had a look at the PC version. And it seems like if you have a pretty nice PC rig, the path tracing, I think, is what it is on it, that it just looks incredible. So it doesn't quite look as good as that, at least from what I saw in the videos on the Xbox, but still pretty nice though. And I mean, it's a great racing series. And what I love about it is just that it's not too realistic, but it's also not too arcadey. So it finds that nice middle ground as far as like the controls of the vehicle. But there's tons of stuff to do that you feel like there is a lot of stuff to do where a lot, where you get a good portion of the game up front, right? Where it's not dependent on like microtransactions and things like that. And then also how to navigate through the world and all. It seems still fairly user friendly. I've talked about it before, where some games, like the UI on some games, it'll just throw me off. It's just too much bloat, too much clutter, and unnecessary clutter, right? But for me, this one is just right, and so I can get from one race to the other without much hassle, and just a lot of fun. And so definitely, if you're a racing game fan, or really just you just like a good video game, and you could maybe get into a racing game, I would highly recommend this one. It's very good. Definitely, I would just wish I had more time to just get lost in this world more. But for what it is, though, it's pretty cool, and yeah, highly recommend it. Now that one I did play, but then two other ones that did come out that are, well, I mean, obviously more games came out. These are just like some of the bigger name games. But there was a Yoshi and the Mysterious Book. I had some curiosity on this. I was thinking, maybe if it's good, maybe I'll pick it up for some shit for the kids. But I saw a couple of reviews, and I mean, it doesn't seem like it's doing horrible, but some of the reviews that I saw though is that the game is just not very fun though, actually. And even a game kind of made for kids, it seems to be a bit of a puzzle game in a way. And apparently, from some of the things that I heard on it, is that there's a lot of like tedious tasks to do in the game, is from what it sounds like. I don't know. I might ultimately end up enjoying it and all, but I had a somewhat of a curiosity towards it after I saw some fairly bad reviews. I'm like, not something I'm too crazy about. I think I did see though that it was like at 82 though on Metacritic, so it's not like it's reviewing bad. It's just some of the specific things that I read in interviews that kind of did throw me off a bit. At least not something that I'm rushing out to try to get. But it is another Nintendo Switch 2 game, which there isn't a whole lot of Nintendo Switch 2 exclusives at this time. So but it still might be worth picking up for you. If anything, the graphics do look pretty nice on it. But the other game that came out too, also, this is a game that I have been interested in, and I'm hoping to get it at some point. It's just a little too expensive right now at the $70 or $60 or whatever the asking price is. But that's for that Lego Batman game, and I mean, I'm a big Batman fan myself, and so this has this seems like something that I would definitely love. And for the most part, it got really good reviews all across the board. A lot of people are saying like it is really like one of the better Batman games out there, including like the Arkham games, and it seems to be inspired by those games as well. But I don't know, I like Legos. I think Legos are cool. I think I've mentioned it before, right? Where some of the Lego stuff that I've gotten pretty recently, and it's all cool. It's fun. It's very relaxing. As you're putting something like a Lego set together, but the Lego games, for some reason, they just never really appealed to me that much. And I mean, I played a little bit of them. And it's like, okay, they're cool and all, but not something that I don't know. They just seem kind of like washed down versions of some of my favorite franchises. But even having said that, though, from the reviews that I saw of this game, definitely have my interest. And so, just because again I'm such a Batman fan, and this one seems to explore pretty much the whole cinematic history of Batman movies, it definitely piqued my interest. So I'm sure I'll get it at some point, maybe just when it's on sale or so. Because usually Lego games go for pretty cheap, so I'm hoping that'll be the case with this one here in the next year or so. But if you're a Batman fan, you like Lego games and all, probably want to pick up, from the start. Uh, Now, from what I haven't really, I did see a few things though that the console versions even have some bugs to them. Like I think like at one point it crashed. After you get to a certain point in the game, the PC, from what I've heard, it runs okay still if you have a decent enough PC. Because it looks like the specs that they came out with it prior to the release seemed like it was demanding a lot of power. But from a little bit that I've seen, right, it seems like it's not that bad though still. But again, do your research on that before you get the game. But I did kind of see a few quick videos on that. Sometimes what I do is like when I'm working, I'm just watching some stuff, on the side, and so I'll just kind of like catch glimpses of information as I'm still there working. But just maybe do your homework on that before you rush out to get it, depending on your console of choice. But yeah, so some pretty interesting stuff. And what's cool, and also, so it doesn't come out until next week, but the 007 First Light seems to be getting a lot of positive buzz. They released a kind of like a launch trailer recently, and I mean, it looks cool. That's another game too that I'd be pretty interested in getting, but again, it's just a little too expensive at the moment, and I'm just really kind of back on the games that I want to get. But I mean, it definitely seems interesting. Um, and what's cool about these four games is that, well, pretty much all of them are based off of like some kind of an existing franchise of some sort. They're all still new games though, so meaning that they're not like a remake or a remaster, and so that's pretty cool, right? It's something that's kind of rare when you get like a stretch of like a bunch of cool new games that are original games, or like I said, even if they're from an existing franchise, that it's not like a remake or a remaster, and so that's kind of cool, and all of them seem to be at least of somewhat decent quality. So that's but just recently, actually, just yesterday, I saw, and actually, I think a lot of content creators were have noticing this that there was an apparent leak that happened for Virtual Fighter 6. And so I started noticing a few content creators talk about it, as apparently some videos leaked on, I think, like Discord or some other forum, and which seems to be Virtual Fighter 6. And so so it's like they show gameplay footage, but it's like a camera pointing at a TV, right? Grabbing some gameplay footage, so it's a little blurry. And then after that, it shows like some developers talking about the game, although I can't quite make out what they're saying. But I mean, if the gameplay that they're showing there is, and it definitely looks like it's legitimate, it looks pretty cool. So I don't know if I talked about it, but some months back there was like a little trailer that was released for like a concept of what Virtual Fighter 6 could be, and not with the. There was one that Sega actually released where it had like Sarah in it, and then a dude with a trench coat. I don't know if it's Akira or not, but there was one prior to that. And the concept of it and all looked outstanding, like the fighting mechanics and everything, right? Where it made it look like an actual real fight, and it looked incredible. And so it got me really excited for what Virtual Fighter 6 could be. Well, this trailer, or this gameplay segments that they showed of this supposed trailer, again, it's still not 100% confirmed, but if it is it's not quite what that original trailer was showing, but it looks pretty stunning though too. So I'm excited for it. I love Virtual Fighter. It's my favorite 3D fighting game series of all time. And so I'm really excited about this one. And so hopefully, not only is it a great game, but also a game that is not, too littered with like microtransactions and all of, which I mean, that's kind of the standard nowadays for fighting games, unfortunately, where it seems like you have to buy a season pass to unlock certain characters and all, which is kind of lame. But at the very least, I hope they give us a pretty beefy game from the start, right? And if the mechanics are anything to go by from what they were shown in the trailer, it looks like it could be pretty incredible. So pretty excited about that. Oh, and another little quick update for Sega too. It looks like on the Crazy Taxi official page, I guess, like on Twitter, it there was like they just showed like a picture or like a little GIF of like it says like taxi, and then it's like flashing, And so very much signaling, right, that we could get some kind of an announcement on the Crazy Taxi game. And so my thought is probably during one of the video game shows during the summer, probably Summer Game Fest would be my thought. And that's cool. I mean, I like Crazy Taxi. I think it's fun. I played a little bit of part two. I never messed around with part three, but they're definitely fun series. Not some of my more favorite Sega series, so it's not the one I'm really excited about. But if it comes out pretty good, I'd be interesting to check out. Still no news though on some of the other Sega games that were announced, right? Like the Streets of Rage, the Golden Axe, and also hopefully something comes of that. But another bit of news that had a lot of people excited, and I kind of got me a bit excited too. Also, is so the Kingdom Come developers. I think they're Warhorse. I think is the name of the developer. I could be wrong on that, but so they made an announcement. So it's official that there's going to be some kind of a new game within the Kingdom Come universe of some sort. It's not really clear what exactly it's going to be, but the one that got a lot of people excited is that there's going to be an open world Lord of the Rings RPG coming out from them at some point. No release dates have been given. Honestly, that Lord of the Rings one is probably going to be a bit far out. Could be even stretching into the next generation. But that's cool, though. I've never played these Kingdom Come games. I have them right now, actually, because I did download the Kingdom Come 2 on my Xbox. Figured, well, I have Game Pass, might as well try to check it out at least. And then the Kingdom Come, the first one, I saw for like $2 one day. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna buy it just to have it. But from what I understand, they're really detailed, fun medieval RPGs, and so that definitely sounds like a good developer to be able to do an open world Lord of the Rings RPG. That sounds cool. And so a lot of people that are fans of the Kingdom Come games were talking. They were highly praising this announcement, as it seems like they're the right developer, right to do an open world Lord of the Rings RPG. I mean that, again, that's very broad. It's very vague on what it could be. Is it going to follow the movies? Is it going to be its own original thing? Nothing is known yet at this time. And again, we're probably a ways out from the game actually coming out. But just the prospect of what it could be is definitely exciting, and so that's pretty cool. So yeah, that's cool. There was some DLC that came out for Marvel Cosmic Invasion. It was like, I think, for like $3.99. So I went ahead and picked it up, and that's for where you get two new characters, and that's for Cyclops and the Thing. So interesting combo duo there, but sure, we'll take it. And I played it a little bit yesterday, actually. My daughter wanted to play some Nintendo, she'll say. And so we played just kind of bounced around from a few games. But I was like, hey, right now that I got, you two with me. So it was my younger daughter, my older daughter, and my youngest daughter. She's getting to the point where she can at least move her character around and push some buttons. So I was like, let's play this game, right? So that way we can have up to 6 characters, right, that we're controlling. And so I tried out the Cyclops and the Thing for like about maybe like 20 minutes or so that we were playing that game. And yeah, they're both pretty fun to use. They're both pretty cool. I really like Cyclops' super move, right, where he does his optic blast and sort of spins his head around and the lasers like swirling all over the place. That looks pretty badass. And so just makes me more excited to see what his involvement in this Marvel Doomsday movie is going to be. But yeah, so you got 2 new characters to control, so that's pretty cool. I'm hoping they continue this, right, and just give us a whole shitload of characters, right? And I mean, it already has a decent amount, right? But let's keep adding more. I'm all for that. And again, at $3.99 wasn't too bad. I don't know if it added anything else. That's the only thing that I really noticed was just that it had Cyclops in the Thing. But for fairly cheap, right, you get some 2 pretty cool new characters for it. There was so just to kind of touch base on this a bit, I wasn't even able to keep up with the story too much because it kept like, and I get it. I think a lot of people that put information out there for video, well, really any kind of content, like any bit of information that comes out, right? They make, they gotta make content about it, right? That's how they make their living. Apparently, it's just pumping out a bunch of videos on whatever news story comes out. And so there was throughout the whole week, I kept seeing about information about Grand Theft Auto 6. And so there was a lot of this information that came out. So I just kind of jotted down some bullet points from what I understand what's happening this week. It was a lot, and then it kind of turned into nothing really major, I guess, right? But basically, there was like some kind of a conversation that I think the main CEO Strauss was having. Is my understanding of it, but ultimately, the interview that was being had, it definitely alluded to the that Grand Theft Auto 6 may be $70, right? At least that was sort of the impression that people were getting. But I didn't quite see some of the, because I did see like other people making videos that no, that's not true. That that's not going to be the case. So again, it sounded pretty exciting at first. Like it almost seemed like they officially announced that it was going to be $70, but then that wasn't quite the case. So again, just something to keep in mind, right? And all that it still hasn't been officially announced what the price is as of this moment. Um, and then there was talks about like if it was getting delayed or not. But then the last video that I saw of it that some people were making yesterday was that the CEO Strauss, he came out saying that it is still set for November of this year. Um, that the marketing for it is probably not going to start until the end of June, is I think what he said, something along the lines of that. So for everyone that was hoping, right? Because we talked about it last episode, I believe, where we were hoping that it was going to be that there was going to be something happen, right? This week for as far as pre-orders and all. Well, that didn't happen, and apparently there was some kind of a drama behind the scenes of that, where people did actually get some kind of a notification about it. I think from Best Buy, so that affiliate link I think that people were getting, but something about that they had their information wrong or something like that, right? Like I said, I wasn't able to keep up with the story overall. But basically, what we mentioned last week that we were hoping for some kind of like pre-order date, a trailer, so of Grand Theft Auto this week, didn't happen. Strauss had come out saying more than likely it'll be towards the end of June, and so we have a little over a month to wait on that probably. Still nothing confirmed on the price, but that would be cool if it was at $70 because, I mean, that's still high, but considering just where that is the standard price right now, and at the very least, what they could do right is keep it at that price. But then the other cool thing though is that if they do keep it at that price, then that also means that. Um, it'd be much harder, I hope anyways, for other companies to justify them trying to increase the price of their games to, like, let's say $80 or so. So hopefully, because whatever the case, Grand Theft Auto 6 is going to be a bit of a trendsetter for the industry, not only in just overall the game overall, but then just like the pricing and whatnot. And so um, at the very least, right? Hopefully that ends up being the case. But I don't know. It's still kind of hard to imagine, realistically, right? With just how a lot of things are being ran nowadays, that Grand Theft Auto 6 would be $60, or I'm sorry, not 60, but $70. But here's hoping, anyways. Another thing, though, that was discussed too was they were talking about how if they still even needed to send out review copies, and so I think it was like an interview that they still did with Strauss. Again, I just saw more of the headlines on this more than actually check out the actual interview. But I think that the overall sentiment was we could send out review copies, right? Just kind of do it the way it's always been done before, right? Publisher sends out copies, review copies to certain establishments, right, to get their thoughts out about the game before the game comes out, so that way people know what they're getting. But on the other end, though, because there's probably the concerns about like leaks getting out. There's a lot of money that got put into this game. I mean, a stupid amount of money. And so I feel like Rockstar probably wants to control the narrative as much as possible on this. And so, what is it worth more for them to put out review codes that could potentially get leaked, and then story spoilers and or gameplay spoilers and all might get leaked to the public beforehand, so people will start making their impressions of it before the game even comes out? Or we're Grand Theft Auto 6. Do we really need to put out review codes? People are going to buy this regardless. So is it worth the risk? And so I don't think any definitive answer was given, but there's a possibility, right, from what it sounds like, that review codes may not go out, right? At least not prior to the game releasing. So we'll see, right, what ends up happening of that. But from they made it sound like that's could be a potential reality, right? So And just to touch base a little bit also on Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3. So, again, if you're new here, I've sort of been using this segment to try to track as much as I can some of the news that has come out regarding for Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3, just sort of to the lead up of the eventual announcement of it. Nothing major, just other than, let's see. Oh, yeah. So, last episode, I talked about how the game could end up coming out or wouldn't come out until April because of the way the fiscal report works on all there in Japan. I don't know if I made the edit on this last episode. So just really quick here, I saw some follow ups to that, and basically it possibly can still come out. Right? They don't necessarily have to disclose the information publicly, as long as they've disclosed that information right of whatever game may be on their fiscal report within the people that need to know, like I would assume investors and whatnot. So I guess the potential is still there, right? That it could come out before April of next year, but again, nothing's set in stone and all. It's just, again, there was just some big back and forth on that. So ultimately kind of amounted to really nothing. What do they say nowadays? A nothing burger. But still fun to speculate, right? As to try to give us an idea of when the game might come out. And then also not only that, more sooner when we could potentially expect the release for the game. And then just a little something here, not a whole lot, but Naoki Hamaguchi has come out stating that basically the whole truth and philosophy of the trilogy won't be revealed until the end of the trilogy and probably sometime after that. What I understood of that is that because there was a lot of questions asked, right? Like as far as like, uh, how does he feel about the fans theorizing as to theory crafting and all of what this whole trilogy could be all about? And so, I mean, it seems kind of obvious, right? But he's basically stated like he was kind of surprised out of like all of the fan theories that were coming out. They were expecting that, but I think it also surprised them too. But basically, as far as like what their actual interpretation of the story that they were trying to tell, basically the official word from them, it's not going to be revealed right until sometime after the trilogy comes out. So, which makes sense, obviously, right? We don't want to spoil anything sooner, but just to hear him clarify that and always kind of interesting, right? Because that's one of the fun, And I'll admit I got suckered into it because it is part of the fun, but I think it's depending on how you go about it, right? Like. I love this world, and I'm intrigued enough by the mystery of what they're setting up with remake and rebirth. The some of the changes that they've made, but then the potential of where the story could go. I'll admit, I kind of got suckered into all that, and I think it's fun. As long as you're not setting your expectation that whatever you feel the game is going to turn out to be, or if you heard something from someone that seems like they have a really cool theory on where the story could go, as long as you're not too disappointed if ultimately the story doesn't go that way, right? If you do it for fun's sake, it is fun. It's a lot of fun, right? I've loved watching like theory crafting videos on Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth. It's been part of the enjoyment of experiencing these two games within these past several years, and it's been a lot of fun to theorize where the story could go. But at the end of the day, Part 3 is going to come out at some point. It's going to have its story, and we'll theorize off of that too. But it's going to have its story right now, which could be vastly different what you know, uh, from what maybe we thought it was going to go. And so that's why I've been kind of holding my reservation for the overall trilogy of what I think about it until I see how it concludes. I mean, overall, it's been a hell of a journey so far, and I really love Remake and Rebirth, even with the flaws that they have. And I'm sure that as long as the part three is of that quality, at least, even if it doesn't quite stick the landing or in certain story beats, I still feel that I will enjoy the overall experience. And the fact that it was made by the original creators is something that we don't always get all the time, like a new vision from a really beloved game. And like I said, if you don't enjoy that vision, you still have the original to go back to. And not only that, there's a lot of cool ways you can mod that original one, right, to get a really cool, so you can kind of make your own remaster of the old game. But but that's been a lot of the fun of it. So, you know, I'm just more, it's just a little bit of nuggets of information that come out, right? Just get me more and more excited for Remake Part 3, which it's been a minute since I've been so excited about something. And I think actually the last time was when I was anticipating Rebirth to come out. So, Final Fantasy VII Remake Trilogy has definitely been on my mind for really since 2015. So over a decade now, as we've been anticipating not only the first game, but then eventually all these other, subsequent sequels that have come, that have been coming out. So yeah,
let's just get it out there. Let's see what it's all about. All right, but jumping into a bit of Nintendo news. So it seems like Nintendo might still be producing Switches. uh, and the thought is that they might just be doing this because they want to give it one last push to try to beat the PlayStation 2. Because last I heard, I think the Switch is at about 155 million or so, and so that would have been right on par with PlayStation 2's original numbers. But not too long ago, Sony somehow found out that the PlayStation 2 sold 5 million more copies, so bumped it up to 160 million. So that's a new number to beat there. And so I think I saw something that it basically alluded to like Nintendo still trying to produce some Switches to try to see if it'll overtake the PlayStation 2. Thus, PlayStation 2 comes out with another 5 million, right? Oh, actually, it was 165 million. That's kind of funny. How much I trust these numbers and all, I don't know. It's just kind of fun to look at them. And it'd be interesting if the Switch does end up overtaking it. As it would seem that the systems, the top selling systems, is because it had something else to it that really appealed to the casuals that gave it that extra bump in units sold, right? So the PS2, it also doubling as a DVD player was a big deal. The Nintendo DS, which is another big seller, that it was portable, but also had like a lot of casual like experiences that we would eventually see like with mobile gaming. I think that was a big part of why that system sold so well. And then with the Switch, being able to have like console like experience on the go, portably was pretty incredible too. So, right, it has like that extra other factor that helps it sell so many units, right? And because it is a portable system, then maybe you want to get one for your kids and maybe your wife or so, right? Like just in our household, I mean, my wife has a Switch. I have the Nintendo Switch OLED, and then a Nintendo Switch 2, and then the Switch Lite that I had bought. I had given that to my daughter, so we have between just the original Switch, we have three of them. No, and actually, that's because I had bought another one, the original Switch prior to, but I ended up giving that one away to my niece. So really, we had four Switches in our household, right? So again, that's four sales right there, right? And I can imagine a lot of households do something similar. So that's, I'm sure, part of the reason why that system has been selling incredibly well. And then just a little bit of, as we're entering into the summer season, which was originally E3 season, but Jeff Grubb, who he's gotten some information correct before for like game leaks and whatnot, or he seems to have some insider knowledge. But his speculation is that we were kind of anticipating this, but that there should be a Nintendo Direct sometime in mid June, but maybe not as obvious nowadays, right? Because Nintendo seems to be doing something different now as far as how it announces their games. I mean, you would think though, still that, excuse me, that they would have some kind of a showcase for summer because you're going to get all the major systems doing some shows, and so you would hope that Nintendo has something, right? Because I feel like Nintendo really needs to put out some heavy hitter games out there from Nintendo because I think that's good. I think this is key right here. So, like, if they do have the Legend of Zelda remake or the Ocarina of Time remake in the works, I think that'll be a really good start. But I feel like they need to like show off something else, right? Like the next Mario game too. Like, give us some information on it, and then not only that, that these games are incredibly well done, right? And because I think if they do get that, if they nail that, then that can definitely start pushing the Switch 2 to become a success in the long run. But we'll see, right? Because there's been a lot of back and forth as far as like how successful the Switch 2 is so far. And you've heard it's like the fastest selling system of all time, but then also that Nintendo had to cut back like 30% of its production on the system. So I don't know. And there's a lot of factors that go into that, right? I don't think it's just like one thing, that is either making it successful or maybe potentially not as successful they would have hoped. There's a lot of factors that go into it. But I guess, but I feel like in the long run, when we look back, was the Switch to a good system? I think this is a pivotal year for it. And this Nintendo Direct could show us potentially, right, what it might be, what it might have in store in the future. And I think those are the two key things, right? Have a really great Zelda game that comes out on it and a really great Mario game. And the Mario one is the one that I think that they need to really start giving us some information on because there's usually been a Mario game at launch or fairly close to launch on pretty much all the systems, right? Let's see, there was Mario and then the original Nintendo, Super Mario World on the Super Nintendo, which was a launch title. Yeah, it was a launch title and a packet title. Um, and then Super Mario 64, which was a launch title on the Nintendo 64. And then on the GameCube, the Super Mario Sunshine, it didn't come out right away, but it came out like about less than a year, I think, after this GameCube had come out. Now, this is in North America releases. And then we had the Wii after that. And so the Wii, what did it have? The Wii didn't have anything Mario right away, actually, to because let's see, I mean, there was a bunch of like games with Mario in it, but the main major because it's these new new Super Mario Brothers Wii. I think that came out later, right in the system's lifetime. I don't think it came out earlier. So let's just say it was Super Mario Galaxy. So that would have actually been, let's see, Super Mario Galaxy. Well, it came out within about a year, right? Because it came out in 2007, so within a year. And then the Wii U had the new Super Mario Brothers. So it was the 2D game, and then the Nintendo Switch has Super Mario Odyssey. So yeah, I mean, we're already past an year on the we're about to be past an year on the Switch 2's lifetime, and we still don't have no indication of what this new Mario game would be. So yeah, this would be, as far as I know, a first for a major Nintendo console. So I really feel like they got to get Mario out there, right? Something major for Mario. Now they've had the Mario Galaxy remasters, which are cool, but like a brand new Mario game, right, is what I think will really make a big difference as far as increasing the sales of the system. It's my thought, anyways. For Xbox, jumping over to them, I didn't really keep up with much Xbox news. The only thing that I saw, and this came out earlier last week, or well, in this week that I'm sure, last week, right? So my podcast. I split up the recording of when I record my podcast. So like I'm recording this on Friday on the 22nd of May, but it won't actually get published until Sunday. So the start of the next week, right? So it kind of throws me off. But basically, from the time that this comes out, so early last week, it was the only thing that I saw though was that Xbox had changed the way they're gonna display the name Xbox now. So it was all in lower, just X, capital X, BOX, lowercase BOX. But now it's going to be all capitalized XBOX. I mean, I think Asha, what she's doing is trying to unify the overall branding of Xbox, right? Let's try to keep it all under one umbrella, right? So I think we talked about it before, to changing it over to Xbox Game Studios instead of Microsoft Game Studios, changing the logo a bit, making it Xbox all capitalized. I think it's just to try to say, like, try to give it an identity again, which is smart. I think that is smart. Um, Still going to come down to like what games can we play on the Xbox, right? And then the whole exclusivity thing, that whole discussion there. So that'll be interesting to see what they end up doing with it. But yeah, but at the very least, it's not Xbox, it's now Xbox. But I guess kind of weird, but makes sense also too, I guess, in a way. And so jumping over to PlayStation. So this first news is kind of PlayStation because it's Destiny 2, which that was a multiplayer back then. But because Bungie is on their PlayStation now, I figured I'd just talk about it here. But Destiny 2, it was just announced, I think, yesterday, or was it today? Just because I saw something about it early this morning, but maybe it was from stories from yesterday. But that it's getting no more updates and patches. So it's still going to be online, but for all intents and purposes, it's pretty much dying out now. Um, I mean, people seem to be a big fan of this game for a long time, but it's going to finally die out. Kind of shows the reality, right, of these live service games, right, that eventually they do die out, and especially ones that were really popular at one point. And so, how much of this also has to do with Bungie just losing a bunch of money for Sony? I think we talked about it last episode, where something about that they lost like 765 million for Sony, something like that. And so, and then Marathon is not doing that great. You know, Sucks, man. I mean, because I know Bungie kind of became something different after they left, being exclusive to Microsoft in Halo. I mean, like I said, Destiny and Destiny 2 did pretty good for them, but they've definitely steered in a completely different direction from what we used to know them as I was always used to them from, their Halo days, right? Back on the Xbox and Xbox 360. But a lot of these companies are different now, from what they used to do. And I mean, it's not to say that they're probably still not filled with a lot of talent. It's just that ultimately the main management of what direction they want to go with these studios, unfortunately, affects a lot of them. And yeah, I mean, they're not dead, Bungie, but it sounds like they're struggling, and Sony doesn't seem to be very happy with the purchase that they made on that. But at the same time, it's like, hey, you guys were the ones chasing these live service games, right? So, yeah, times are changing, and so hopefully this time, I mean, it's unfortunate, right, for anybody that gets laid off. Obviously, I mean, that's it's especially when it's decisions from management. That's always a frustrating thing, right? In any job sector, it's highly frustrating, but just a reality of things. One of the big news though that was coming out though was the so there's been a lot of talks that Sony is really wanting to so kind of this is kind of a two-part story. So the Sony is really wanting to go back to like exclusives from what it sounds like. So much so that they've officially announced now also that there's going to be no more PC ports, according to Jason Schreier, who reported that supposedly I think last Monday in a town hall meeting that Herman Hall is still the main CEO of Sony, uh, at least in the Western division, I believe, that he came out and announced that, yeah, that we're pretty much getting away from PC. That ultimately, I think the reasoning for that is that it just didn't really sell that well for them, and that it was also kind of killing the PlayStation brand as well too. Because the hope back then was that, well, we release a game. So let's say like a brand new sequel, like Ghost of Yote, for example. I think one that was kind of shown as an example. And so that's the new one in the series. But if we release Ghost of Tsushima, like a little bit prior to that, PC gamers can get their experience of what this game's all about. And then when the new one comes out, it's like, oh, hey, maybe I'll go get a PlayStation now to play the sequel to it. That was seemed to be the sort of the strategy behind it. But it sounds like the sales weren't all that great. And also, it's the brand recognition too, also that it was damaging their branding. Which, I mean, it kind of makes sense overall. This whole exclusivity thing, because this is really started becoming the forefront. And it's funny because just like life, right? Things come in waves. Everything, politics, video games, movies, taste and fashion, music taste, and all. It kind of comes in waves, right? Like we go one direction, then we go the other direction, then we go the other direction. And so there was a stretch there, right, where people were against exclusives games, right? Why would you limit your game to be played only on one platform? Everyone should be able to play them. But now it's starting to trend back to, well, exclusives are necessary because that's what drives competition, right? I guess I've been around the block for a while now. That it's just kind of funny to me now how opinions change and whatnot. I'm I come from the time where exclusives was the only thing, right? Well, not the only thing, but what drove you to a certain system was because of the games that were on that system. So, for example, the reason we got a Sega was because of the arcade ports originally, and then because they had the more mature games, at least at the time, right, with the Sega Master System, and then leading into the Sega Genesis. Eventually, though, I did want to get a Super Nintendo because we had those cool, like, well, there was the Mario games, which are a lot of fun, and then also like those cool adventure games, like Super Metroid or The Legend of Zelda, and then it started getting a lot of the great JRPGs, right, like Final Fantasy and whatnot. And then when the PlayStation came on board, right, I mean, really, we got that mainly because we knew that Final Fantasy VII was going to be on that system. That's what drove us to get the PlayStation, and so forth, right, through many generations after that. But then, exclusives games kind of started really waning out within the eighth generation to an extent, but then especially with the ninth generation. And so, because the thought was, well, it's not fair to that, if you really want to play a game that is only stuck on one ecosystem. And so, made sense, right, to let's say at least port your systems over to PC. Um, and I mean I hear that argument too also because especially nowadays with how expensive everything is, let's say if you're a gamer, right, you want to play some games, right, but you can only afford one system and you're stuck with that system, whether if it's the PlayStation, the Xbox, Nintendo, or a PC. It's kind of hard for people to say like, oh, I own this and this nowadays, right? I mean, a lot of people do, but it's starting to get harder and harder as especially with this economy. So let's just say Wolverine, right, which is coming out on the PlayStation 5. And I mean, sounds like it's not coming out on PC, but you're a PC gamer. And let's just say you got a taste of what PlayStation games are because they were porting some of the games over to PC. So you were like, I'm not going to get a PlayStation because within a year I'll be able to get it on the PC. So, but now that's not the case, right? And so now you would have to shell out money for a PlayStation 5 just to play Wolverine, which, I get that kind of sucks too, right? Um, but so I hear both arguments. I normally, for me personally, and this is just a personal choice, I'm all for people. It's not like I'm a fanboy or anything like that. That to me is stupid, right? I was a bit of a fanboy for Sega back in the day when I was a kid, but that's about the extent of it. But so I say this more because I saw how much having exclusive games on systems really drove competition, right? For many generations, some of the best generations in gaming were because each system really tried to output the best games for their console. And that made just a bunch of incredible games, right? From like the to an extent, the second generation, third generation, fourth generation, fifth generation, especially the fourth generation, the fifth generation, also the sixth generation, also, right? Definitely and then the seventh generation also too. But then when we get into the eighth generation, Sony kind of won that because Xbox wasn't really doing too much, but there was still a lot of great exclusive games on the Sony as well too, and then of course Nintendo. But now we get into this generation, and yes, Sony's killing it as far as sales wise goes. But it's almost just because it's just sort of the default system now, not so much because of the exclusives that it has on it. And so and that's the reason why I personally like exclusives on a system just because it drives competition. Now I'm nerdy enough to be invested in this hobby. Well, for many years, I don't know how much I will be kind of going forward, but for many years, I was invested enough so much, right, that I was able to purchase a lot of systems, right, and a lot of different games for the system, and it was incredible, right? I still think like, especially the fourth and the no, I'm sorry, the fourth, yeah, well, the fourth and the sixth generation were just outstanding for that, where each system had a lot of great games on there. And yeah, the fifth generation too. Uh, Same with the seventh, right? But we started seeing more games cross over to each system. But and so I just felt that the competition that there was there really drove a push for making these incredible games, right? But like I said, I understand now though, because of the way the economy is and everything, that it's hard for people to justify the purchase of another system when everything's so damn expensive. So again, it's I see both sides to it. Um, I don't know if I mean, for me, it'd be kind of hard to pick and choose right now, just because, again, right, there's the thing that I would kind of want, which is exclusives because it drives up competition and I think makes for a better output of games. But the reality is the world that we live in now, and that is kind of difficult for people to buy multiple systems, right? Of just because of the way the economy is. So, so again, I'm kind of torn on that 50-50 because of the current state of the world right now, basically, if that makes any sense. But anyways, that also leads to Sony looking on bringing back some legacy IP. So there's been a lot of reports of this that they're looking on exploring their old games that made them successful in the past. And the one that keeps coming up a lot is that Infamous 1 and 2 are getting some kind of a remake or remaster of some sort on the PlayStation 5. And there's a lot of hype behind this now. And so people, I haven't really seen where these leaks are coming from, but however they are, though, people are starting to get pretty excited about it. So yeah, I'm down for that. That'd be cool. Infamous 1, I really liked. I never got to beat Infamous 2, but it seemed like at least the gameplay was, even improved on more. So yeah, I'd be curious for it. It's a superhero game, but not based like on a Marvel or DC property. And so I'm sure that, they don't have to worry about like licenses and all. And hell, if anything, they can maybe sell their own merchandise off of that. And I mean, I think Infamous 1 and 2, I don't know exactly how much they sold for the PS3, but I think that they sold pretty well. But part one is one that could get a makeover just because it's the first one, the frame rate was a bit choppy on it. Part two, though, looked pretty solid though on the PlayStation 3 though. So I don't know how much more of a touching up they could do on that one, except for like increased frame rate and resolution. But I guess I'd be curious about. I really like the first two Infamous games, so definitely something that I personally am kind of excited for. And I don't know. I mean, it's we could be seeing something here revealed soon, and I'll get into that here in a little bit later. But I mean, if but so let's say Infamous exists. The other ones that I really want them to bring back, at least the remaster, is Killzone, 1, 2, and 3, and then also the Resistance trilogy. There are games that I feel could really benefit from like a frame rate boost. Again, at the very least, remaster them and bring them out like in a package of some sort. because back in the PlayStation 3, they used to release some of the trilogies from the PlayStation 2 in like a remaster package. So like Jack and Daxter, Ratchet and Clank, and then the God of War games also 1 and 2, but also had like Chains of Olympus and Ghost of Sparta. And so something like that, but only on the PlayStation 5 now. So those are some that I would really wish they would bring back. A brand new Sly Cooper game and a brand new Jack and Daxter game. I think that would be pretty cool. I would really like a new Ratchet and Clank game, but I can go a little bit without that just because we already had a somewhat recently Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, and Ratchet and Clank has had a lot of games throughout the years. So I would have called off on another Ratchet and Clank game if it meant that we could get at least another Sly Cooper or Jack and Daxter. I feel like the PlayStation 2 had those three knockout punches of three incredible trilogies on that system from those platformer series that and then they just sort of abandoned them except for Ratchet and Clank, and so I feel like they could benefit from a brand new game from those series there. um well, God of War, well, we're already getting that God of War remake, right? Trilogy. So so that's cool, right? So I guess we're good with God of War, and then supposedly this new God of War fake game. But God, what else? A Twisted Metal. That'd be pretty cool to get another game on, and I can see that going live service, right? Would you get? Would it be my cup of tea? But okay, cool, I get it, right? It makes sense for that series to do something like that. Um, but it'd be cool if it has still like a cool single player, right? Because that's what I really loved about that game, or actually local co-op too. But what else on the Sony? Legend of Dragoon, that'd be pretty cool. Um, God, there's a bunch of other stuff out there. I just can't think of the top of my head. But yeah, so that's interesting, right? So hopefully something will come out from that, and as they're supposedly exploring their legacy catalog of games to bring some of them back. But that also leads into we got the official announcement that there is going to be a state of play on June 2nd, and so this is. It was pretty cool, right? They announced it. There's a lot of speculation going on what's going to be shown here because they announced it a few weeks prior, right? So we're on what I say, May 22nd. So we're about 10 days away, or 11 days. Does May have 31 days? I think it does, right? I should know this. I work at a bank and I'm constantly looking at the calendar. But about 10 days, right? And so it's pretty early that they announced this. And so the speculation is that they're maybe really getting ready to show like a really awesome show. Um, Part of it though might be because they did say that they're gonna have some showings at a theater. I think in Texas somewhere. I think I saw, or somewhere else maybe. But it could also be that just so that fans can get their tickets right to ahead of time to go to this. But if they're having showings of this direct, or I'm sorry, the state of play at a theater, maybe it's because they really want people to experience like some of these announcements in a really cool way. So what is going to be shown, right? Well, one thing that they have announced officially is that they're going to do some kind of a deep dive on Wolverine. So that could probably be it because I think I saw something to that. They're going to have like snacks and beverages that are Wolverine themed. So that my guess is that that's it, right? That's Wolverine is going to be like their main thing that they want to show off on this state of play, and I'm excited about Wolverine. It's actually probably been my most anticipated game this year, even for me personally, more so than Grand Theft Auto 6. I've Wolverine is my favorite Marvel superhero. I love Marvel, and then it's being developed by Insomniac Games, which is their incredible developers, and so I'm super hyped for this game. And the trailer that they showed, a little while back, looks incredible. And so my hope is that it's more action oriented than say like an open world game. But just give me like some kick ass action, right, with Wolverine, which it looks like it will deliver on that. But then also like a pretty cool story. And I mean, the visuals already look incredible, and then it's pretty polished, plays well, and all. And I'm set, right? And I'm really hyped for this, so that's cool. I'm actually getting really giddy about thinking of what they're going to show for that deep dive on Wolverine. So that's pretty cool. But it seems like, from what I've heard, that that's going to be the opening, right? I think I saw somebody talk about that it was going to be the opening. So let's just assume if it is, well, they would have to close it on something, right? So what could that be? Or even in the middle, right? What are they going to show off? Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3? I don't think so. I don't think so. I think that again, I'm already hesitant that it's going to come out on the Summer Game Fest 3 days later, right on, um, on June 5th, and so even a little bit earlier, I don't think so. And then also be the specific a Sony event. The only things that you can say that that maybe it would be shown at this event is a few things, I guess. And so let's just assume that the whole thing about the fiscal report and all that, even though Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3 wasn't on that report, at least what was shown publicly, let's just say that that doesn't matter, right? That it could still release prior to April. So there's that, right? So let's just say it is released in March or February or even January. Assuming that if that were the case, then yeah, it would seem like they could show it off at this point, right? Uh, Now, more than likely, my thought is that Remake Part 3 is going to release on all the three systems and possibly PC. So PlayStation, Sony, Microsoft, and then PC, right? So because, Sony doesn't have that exclusivity anymore. But I guess if you want to make an argument, like if it could still be at the Sony State of Play, is that the Sony still maybe have a bit of an exclusivity window that Final Fantasy VII would come out for, like, let's say, I don't know, a few months or whatever, right? Before it comes out on the other systems. I mean, possibly, yeah, but I don't know. I think that almost be a bit of a kind of a dick move towards like Nintendo fans and Microsoft fans because it's like they just got the game, right? So remake and rebirth, and so then now they have to wait longer. I don't know. It seems I'm no expert on this and all, but it just seems like marketing wise and all, it seems like it wouldn't be the right thing to do to the fans of those systems there, specifically on the Nintendo, right? Because I would imagine that this game's going to sell really well on the Nintendo's platform, but we'll see. But I don't know. It just doesn't seem right, right? That if they did that, I feel like it would come out on all three systems. Now, it's not to say that it still couldn't come out on a Sony event, even if it doesn't have that exclusivity window anymore. But I don't know. It just doesn't seem right. And while the Sony event is pretty big, it's still not as big as Summer's Game Fest, which is where I would assume they would want to show off the game, especially because that's where they showed off Rebirth too, right? The first major trailer of Rebirth. Not the first announcement of Rebirth, but the first major trailer of it. So I don't know. And I'm still hesitant on the Game Fest, Summer Game Fest, but I don't think it's going to be at the Sony event. I mean, if it was on there, hell yeah. I just don't see that happening though. I hate to say that, but I just don't see that happening. But we'll see, though, right? I mean, ultimately, we won't know until the second, obviously. But what else could they show, though? I mean, I would think that they would show whatever this new God of War game is, the one supposedly involving Faye. Um, I don't think they'll show anything about the remake trilogy yet because they made it sound like it's going to be a while till we hear anything about that. So I don't think they would show anything on that. Maybe like another quick update, but I don't think they would. But if rumors are to be believed, and it's amazing how much how right a lot of these leaks are, though. So that's why it's hard to discount a lot of them now, just because a lot of them have turned out to be right. A lot of them false, but a lot of them correct too. Also, when they're coming from like people that have a decent track record, and so I'm gonna put my money that yeah, there is gonna be an announcement of this God of War Faye game, whatever that ends up being, or I don't know if it's gonna have Faye necessarily, but that's what it seems to be anyway. So it seems like that's a new God of War game, basically. That is not the remake trilogy. Is going to be my guess. The infamous remakes. I'm really betting also that they're going to show something on those two as well. So that'd be pretty cool. Um, let's see, what else could they show? I don't know if they would show anything Spider-Man, like the Venom supposed game that's coming out. I don't know because they're already doing Wolverine. I don't think they would show anything on Spider-Man, but who knows, right? What else could they show? The intergalactic game. Maybe, I guess. I don't know. I feel like that's a 2027 game and probably a late 2027 game. So I feel like it might be a little too early to show off anything on that. I feel like that game's gotten so much backlash that if you show it again way too early, it's going to kill whatever hype it might have. I'm personally not too interested in that one, so which sucks because Naughty Dog. I was always anticipating like a new Naughty Dog game, but this is like the first time that I'm really kind of like, meh, on a Naughty Dog game, which sucks. But again, just not they're just it's just not the Naughty Dog from before. What else could they show though? I don't know. I guess those are my main hopes. I would assume that then we might have like a collection of like some kind of remasters, remakes of some sort, right? So I'm kind of hoping for Killzone and Resistance. That'd be so cool if they brought out something of those. I don't see that happening really, but I feel like Sony could use some good first-person shooters though that are Sony exclusives. If we were doing this little exclusive thing again, right? But I don't know. I highly doubt it, but that'd be pretty cool though. I'm pretty sure there'll be some games that are coming out on like the catalog, the PlayStation classics. Uh, what those could be, I'm not sure, but there was some interesting information that I saw that people were able to get a PS3 emulator running on Linux on the PlayStation 5, something like that. So, it definitely seems like the PlayStation 5 is capable of doing it. It's just a matter of if Sony wants to put the resources towards it. But I say that because, like, what if they were able to bring out like a batch of games uh, and by batch, I mean maybe one or two. Realistically, what they would do if they did at all. But like PlayStation 3 games, like native running PlayStation 3 games on the PlayStation 5, that'd be pretty cool. And again, my bet would be or my hope would be for the Killzone and Killzone 1 was a PlayStation 2 game, but like Killzone 2 and 3, and then Resistance 1, 2, and 3, because they had Resistance on their streaming, but then for some reason they got rid of them. I don't know why. Like that was weird, but yeah, that'd be my hope though. Um, Maybe some information on this Battle for Hydra game the one with Captain America and Black Panther. I mean, I'm pretty sure that's multi-platform, but that's a Marvel game, and I don't know if they want to do that also with Wolverine. And that's the thing too is it seems like they're really going out with Wolverine on this state of play. So it's almost like whatever other big game gets announced, I would think that maybe they want to do it in a way where it doesn't overshadow Wolverine. And so, like something like Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3 has the capable, could possibly. I mean, honestly, I think Wolverine would probably be more popular. But at least the fan base, right? It'd be on par with that, and I don't know if Sony wants to do that to try to overshadow from like their own first party game, right? With a third party game like Final Fantasy VII, and that's why another reason why I kind of doubted that it would be that. But excuse me. But yeah, I guess that's all I have really. More and more I'm falling off of like potential games that might come out. So I'm not completely up to speed on everything on what might come out, here in the near future. But those are just some quick thoughts on what I think might come out for this state of play. But either way, it should be pretty exciting. And yeah, like I said, at the very least, very excited about Wolverine. And just wanted to end off on this. So finally got to see the Super Mario Galaxy movie. I bought it mainly for my daughter so they could watch it, but I was also wanting to watch it too. But my daughters were really wanting to watch it, and so I actually got to watch it yesterday. I kind of split it up in chunks where my youngest daughter really wanted to watch it, and so we watched it a bit the night before as I was trying to help her to go to sleep, and then after school we finished watching the movie, and it's cool. I like it. I thought it was pretty cool. It's I mean, the story, it definitely moves at a really quick pace, and it's just taking you from one set piece to the other to sort of really show off like a lot of cool like Mario and Nintendo stuff. But I don't hate that though. I mean, that's kind of cool, and the story is well enough told, and it's cohesive enough that it's like, okay, it's cool, whatever, right? Um, but and I mean, the story does feel admittedly a bit shallow, right? There's not a whole lot to it, but it has some heartfelt moments to it. And the new characters that they introduced, Rosaline, she's pretty cool. And what I love about it too also is that I mean, all the characters, right, all across the board are pretty much what you see in the video games, which is great, right? I mean, I love when they do that. Where it's not like an interpretation of what they look in the video games. Like, no, they look like they do in the video games, and you got to you got to visit a lot of like cool Mario locales, like from a lot of their more modernish 3D games. Like you'll see references to like Super Mario Sunshine, Super Mario Odyssey, and obviously Super Mario Galaxy games, right? And so that's kind of cool, right? That because a lot of times, at least maybe just for people like me, right, and all where we grew up with, we grew like my generation, right, grew up with video games. So I think the default setting of what we know of Mario games has been like the old Mario games, but now we're starting to see in mainstream like the newer stuff too, which is cool too, right? Like Mario Galaxy, Mario Odyssey, and all that. So that's cool, right? Where it's not just the Mushroom Kingdom, but we're also seeing that desert area, right, with the upside down pyramid from Odyssey, and then all the floating planets, right, like in Mario Galaxy, right, where that's also starting to become a bit more of the default setting now for Mario games, at least in the conscience of a lot of people as they're bringing this stuff out on different medias like movies and such. And so it's a different era, right, and I think that's cool. So um, Fox McCloud was pretty cool in it. He doesn't have a big role in it and all, but the moments that he's there is pretty cool. And Glenn Powell voicing him is pretty spot on, and so definitely gets me interested in playing the Star Fox game right coming out next month. So yeah, so overall, I mean, if I were rating it, like let's say on a scale of 1 through 10, I'd give it an 8, and that's as a fan reviewing the game. Critically, I mean, maybe like a 7.5 out of 10, because the story is a bit shallow, but because of all the cool Nintendo goodness in it and all, which is really why you're going to see the movie, at least a big reason for it, I'd still say about an 8 out of 10, right? So, in this one, because the critics and the critic reviews and the user reviews are vastly different. Like I think the critics review is like in the 40s, where the user reviews are like in the eight. It's like an 88%. I'm definitely going to side more with the users on this one, as I feel like again it's nothing story wise, not anything incredible, but it's got a lot of Nintendo Mario goodness in it. It's fun to watch. It's funny. Really colorful too. I mean, it looks the on my OLED screen and all look pretty amazing and sharp and all. And so I was really impressed with the visuals on it. So for all that, there, sure, yeah. And my two daughters got a kick out of it too. Also, especially my youngest one, she was like really giddy at it the whole time. And then right when it finished, she's like, "Can I watch Mario Galaxy again?" I was like, "Okay, we're not gonna watch it again." So it definitely takes me back right when I was a kid, and I really got hyped about something that I really loved, and then just wanted to watch a movie over and over and over again. For me, was probably Transformers the movie, right? Um, but so that was kind of cool to see, right? So like I said, for all that there, sure, yeah, I'd recommend watching it if you're a fan of like just animation, Nintendo, Mario, and and you just want to have a fun time, right, watching a movie. But let's get into it now with the main reason why I'm doing this episode here. And so we are going to do a bit of a retrospective, a bit of a deep dive, a bit of a review, and just overall personal thoughts on Super Mario World. And so again, I'm going to kind of treat this the same way as far as tone and all of what I was doing with my years in gaming retrospectives, and that's just it's going to be very casual. I mean, I'm getting some information from like Wikipedia and some other sites, and then also just my own knowledge of what I know of a certain game. And so that's why most of the times the games that I'm going to pick on this is probably going to be a game that I'm somewhat familiar with, at least to an extent, right? Um, and but it's going to be pretty casual. So meaning again, I may not have everything correct, or I might even miss out on some things, right, that is really relevant to said game. But I just figured I'd do this to change things up a bit and to highlight some games that I feel again are really great, had some cultural impact, and I have some kind of a personal attachment to, or even if the game maybe didn't make a big splash culturally, that maybe it still pushed the video game medium forward in some sense. And so the reason I say that also is because there's a game that I have planned to do a retrospective on, probably not next week, but the week after that, is a game that fits that bill where it's a really good game. I feel personal. I have a personal attachment to it. Didn't quite have a big cultural impact, but I feel like for at least in the video game industry, right, and all, it did kind of push it forward in a sense. But anyways, we'll get to that one when the time comes. But this is Super Mario World. So if I can edit this all correctly, I may have some music playing in the background. Hopefully, this doesn't get copyright striked or anything. I don't know who the hell would even be looking at my channel here, but just figured I'd do this just to fit the mood, I guess, right? So, Super Mario World, this game, I mean, even if when you look at like some of the top 100 games of all times list. This one, you can usually see it towards the top, if not the top game. I mean, that's how incredible this game is, right? So, if you're on the younger end, like, what is it about this game, right? That is so great. I mean, there's been a bunch of other Mario games that have come out, and so you're going to tell me that none of them is better than this one? Well, let's get into it a little bit, right? And see if I can sell you on why this game is so beloved even to this day. So a little bit of history on the game here. So Super Mario World, so it came out in 1990. It's a platforming game, just like the previous Mario games, and so it was developed and published by Nintendo for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, or the Super Famicom, as it was known in Japan. So in Japan, it released in 1990. So it was out a full year before in Japan, where in 1990 we got, if I recall right, Super Mario Brothers 3. Did we get it in 1990? I think we did. I think we did, yeah. So, but Japan already had Super Mario World, right, on the new Nintendo system over there. But yeah, so we got it over here in 1991, and then in the PAL territories in 1992. So, you control Mario in this one, and still kind of the same thing. You're out to save Princess Peach. And so there's still Bowser and the Koopalings that you're trying to fight, right? I mean, that's that's still the same. So it's very similar to the other Mario games in terms of the basic platforming. But I've talked about the original Mario games before, and how precise they got the platforming right. And by that I mean like the timing of the jumps, on how easy it is to pick up and play, but hard to master, right? As the challenges get harder. And by that I mean knowing how to time your jump, depending on, like, for example, the width of the pit that you need to jump over, or how high you need to jump, right, to get to another ledge. All of that was really perfected with the original Mario game. So I think that, for me, having been playing video games for a while, is maybe something that we take for granted, but it's why I still hold a lot of these old games to high esteem, because they perfected these things back then, right? And so in this one, so it doesn't really change much up as far as that goes, but it did add a few new features though. And But otherwise, in the levels, right, you're still going through the levels, getting to the end of the stage. And only this time though, there is a a mid checkpoint though. And then you get to the end of the level, and you still have, get 100 coins, you get a life, you're still on a timer, right? So that does give a bit of urgency to the game. um, but the cool thing about it though is that you can still go back in the stage, right? And where it's not just moving forward. So that was kind of cool, because in the original ones, at least as far as I know, you couldn't go like back, right? You always had to keep moving forward. Not that the screen's auto scrolling, at least not on all the stages. On some of them, yes, but that, if you wanted, like, oh, I forgot to go into that pipe or whatever, in this one you can't go back, right? And all, so that was pretty cool. But let's see. But Nintendo Entertainment Analysts and Development developed the game. Okay. So Nintendo Entertainment Analysis and Development. Okay, so that's apparently a name of division there in Nintendo. So they developed the game, led by director Takashi Tezuka and producer and series creator Shigeru Miyamoto. It was the first Mario game for the Super Nintendo, and was designed to make the most of the console's technical features. So, because the Super Nintendo obviously, right, brought uh, some new tools, right, that they can use. So that was must have been pretty exciting, right, for them to be able to utilize some of those. And so this time they have more freedom to, compared to the previous series, right, or the previous installments on the Nintendo Entertainment System. One of the biggest additions to this game, right, was Yoshi, and so he was actually thought of anyways, when they were making the Nintendo Entertainment System games, but for whatever reason, right, programming power, or just, I guess, however to implement that, they just couldn't quite do it on the Nintendo, and so they had to wait for the Super Nintendo, right, to do it because of hardware limitations. And so again, right, so Super Mario World is often considered one of the best games in the series, and is cited as one of the greatest video games of all time. It sold more than 20 million copies worldwide, making it the best-selling Super Nintendo game. Obviously, that was aided a lot that it was a pack-in title, right? But still, that's pretty good. It also led to an animated television series and a 1995 prequel. Now, the animated television series, I wasn't aware of this, so I just kind of looked it up real quick here. And so the animated series, let's see. It looks like 13 episodes of the show were aired as part of a block with Captain N, the Game Master, called Captain N and the New Super Mario World on NBC. And the animation was provided by Pacific Rim Productions. Interesting. I didn't know that. I knew they had some Mario cartoons, but I guess I didn't know that. But really quick, just to, I guess, kind of going off on a little side thing here, but looks like Walker Boone voiced Mario, Tony Rosato voiced Luigi, Tracy Moore was Princess Toadstool. Andrew Sabiston voiced Yoshi. Harvey Ekin voiced King Koopa, and Dan Hennessy as Bulky Koopa. So those were some of the bigger roles on that. So that's cool. Little interesting information there. And then this game also spawned the sequel later, or a prequel, I should say, Yoshi's Island, which Yoshi's Island kind of ended up becoming its own sort of series. But at the time, it was considered, I guess, kind of like a sequel to Super Mario World, you can say. But then it was also re-released. I mean, this game has been re-released on multiple different versions of it. The first one was on the compilation, the Super Mario's All-Star compilation. So that came out in 1992, I believe. 1992 or 1993, one or the other. And so Super Mario All-Stars is a great collection that has the remastered versions of the Nintendo Entertainment System Mario games. Only now it kind of spruces up the graphics to be somewhat in par with the Super Mario World graphics. But so those ones only had the three Nintendo games, along with the Lost Levels game. So that was cool. But then later on, looks like in 1994, they re-released that compilation with Super Mario World also added. So literally, if you can find, like, if you're a retro collector, right, and if you can find that cartridge, so Super Mario All Stars plus Super Mario World, you get 5 amazing Mario games right there, right? Super Mario Brothers, Super Mario Brothers 2: The Lost Levels, which is again the actual Super Mario Brothers 2 in Japan. Super Mario Brothers 2, which is a version that we got here in the United States, which is originally Doku Doku Panic in Japan. Super Mario Brothers 3, and then Super Mario World, right? So that's an excellent package right there. Some of the best games of all time, all in one cartridge, right? So that would have been pretty amazing to have owned. And then eventually the game was also re-released on the Game Boy Advance, and that was a Super Mario World, Super Mario Advance 2, which is a kind of like a updated version of Super Mario World that has a few new features. Like I believe you can play as Luigi on it. And then it did get released also for the Virtual Console on the Wii and the Wii U and the new Nintendo 3DS as part of the Super NES Classics Edition. And then both the Super Nintendo and the Game Boy Advance versions are playable as of right now on the Nintendo Switch Online services. So, a few cool ways to play it. Obviously, if you have the original cartridge, but if you are a collector, right, and if you can get that collection right there, that'd be pretty sweet. I don't know what it costs for though, right? I'm almost thinking it might be kind of expensive, but that'd be a pretty cool collection to have because again, you get all these excellent Mario games, but along with Super Mario World in there. But right now, if you have the Nintendo Switch Online service, right, it's on there and it plays perfectly fine, at least from what I can tell. But if none of those are an option for you, you can also go, the emulation route. And if you do go that route, not that I'm advocating for it, but there's a lot of cool ROM hacks that you can do on it. So, for example, I've seen people do like widescreen on it, and also I think that they can change up the levels too on some of these hacks too. So, tons of great ways to play this game, right? And it's pretty easy to do all that too as well too. But again, with the gameplay, so the main thing that really added to this was Yoshi, right? But aside from that, though, we also got some pretty cool power-ups. So, actually, no, you can't control Luigi in this one, I guess, in the Super Mario World originally on the Super Nintendo. I almost thought you couldn't, but I guess you can. But it's so now you can still dash, you can still jump, and also now you can fly or float if you get the cape power-up. And so that gives Mario the ability to sort of just kind of like fly and float through a level and even sort of like dive bomb as well too. So it gives him some flexibility. And honestly, when I've played this game, I never really used the cape to its fullest capability. And I've seen some players do some really cool stuff on it, but I just never really mess around too much with trying to do some of the cooler moves you can do with that cape. But another move that you can do also is a spin jump. And so that helps where like, for example, like if you're wanting to break certain blocks, that can help with that there. And you can use that as an attack too, or almost like a double jump also. Like, for example, if you're on Yoshi, you jump and you do the spin. It can give you a little bit of an extra boost in your jump. Let's see. And so overall, the game has 96 levels. and I believe part of that though are like bonus levels though. Um, but so you have the overworld map that you're going through, selecting the stages as you can, and you have a little bit of or freedom to explore a little bit, as I believe that's how you find certain secret areas. I beat the game once, and I've played the game like at least up to halfway or so several times, and I've only found a few secrets so on it, and so this is still a game that I feel like I can still go back to and still find a lot of cool new stuff on it. And I think that was part of the appeal of it. It's just that it was a platformer that you can explore, right? And that was a little bit unheard of back in the day, at least with this level of quality, anyways. Um, but the overworld map displays an overhead representation of the current world and has several paths leading from the world's entrance to a castle. Paths connect to action panels, fortresses, ghost houses, castles, and other map icons, allowing players to take different routes to reach the world's goal. Moving the on-screen character to an action panel or castle grants access to that course. The majority of the game takes place in its 2D linear levels populated with obstacles and enemies, which involves the player traversing the stage by dashing, jumping, and dodging or defeating enemies. The player is given a number of lives, which are lost if Mario comes into contact with an enemy, while Small Mario falls off the screen, gets crushed, touches lava, or runs out of time. The game ends when the player runs out of lives, although the player can continue from the most recent save point, successfully completed castle, fortress, or haunted house by selecting continue. Each world features a final stage with a boss to defeat. Each of the 7 worlds features fortresses controlled by one of the Koopalings, and the player also battles Bowser in his castle in the 7th and final world. Super Mario World includes a multiplayer option, which allows 2 players to take turns at navigating the overworld map and accessing the stage levels. The first player controls Mario, while the second player controls Luigi. Okay, so you can play as Luigi. I almost for some reason thought you could in the original one, but I guess you can. In addition to the power-ups from previous games, such as the Super Mushroom and Fire Flower, Super Mario World has a new power-up, the Cape Feather, which allows Mario a cape and the ability to fly, glide in the air, and use the cape as a sail. It also introduces the ability to store an extra power-up in a box at the top center of the screen. So, for example, if you obtain a Fire Flower or a Cape Feather and then a Super Mushroom, then it'll appear in the box. So you kind of store up like an extra power-up, kind of like keeping one in the chamber, so to speak. Uh, Collecting a star grants Mario temporary invisibility for minor damages. However, it does not protect the player from falling into lava or off the screen, nor if the player runs out of time. If Mario gets hit by an enemy, the stored item in the box will automatically drop. Alternatively, the player can manually release a stored item at any time. So again, not changing up the formula too much, but the way like the cape is implemented again, you can use that only not to get through the level, but also find some secrets too as well. But the biggest addition, right, also was Yoshi. So he's a dinosaur companion that Mario can ride and can eat most enemies. So if a Yoshi eats a Koopa or its shell, he can spit out either fire or the shell at the enemies. And he can also, let's see. So depending on which enemy he eats, right, and I can grant them certain different abilities. So like flashing Koopa shells produces all 3 abilities, while green shells produce none. The default Yoshi is green, and the game also has hidden blue, yellow, and red Yoshis. The player can attain each colored Yoshi by finding its egg in the Star World areas and feeding it either 5 enemies, a Super Mushroom, a Fire Flower, the Cape Feather, or the Star Man caused by Baby Yoshi to mature. And so, although the main objective is to navigate through 7 worlds to reach the end of the game, the player can beat the game much faster by using secret Star Road routes. And so that's some of the secrets I was mentioning. To access a hidden world, the player needs to find keys scattered throughout the levels. When a key is found, it must be brought to a keyhole to unlock either a new level or a Star Road. Exploring these secret stages can lead to other stages, such as a special world. Completion of the special zone permanently changes some of the enemy sprites and alters the overworld map's color scheme. So again, yeah, a lot of cool stuff that you can find in this, a lot of hidden secrets that sort of gave it that addictive quality that basically almost on the same line of like the Zelda game, Link to the Past or Super Metroid. And that's why I hold those 3 games, those games and then this one, Super Mario World, in high esteem, because there's not only so much fun to play through, but there's so many secrets to unlock, and it just keeps you really engaged while having some excellent gameplay. So the plot, as detailed in the instruction booklet. So after bringing peace to the Mushroom World in Super Mario Bros. 3, the brothers Mario and Luigi decide to go on vacation with Princess Toadstool to a place called Dinosaur Land, a prehistoric themed world swarming with dinosaurs and other enemies. While resting on the beach, the princess is captured by Bowser, of course. When Mario and Luigi wake up, they try to find her and, after hours of searching, come across a giant egg in the forest. It suddenly hatches, and out of it comes a young dinosaur named Yoshi, who tells them his dinosaur friends have also been imprisoned in eggs by Bowser's kids, the evil Koopaling. Mario and Luigi soon realize that Bowser's forces must have captured Toadstool as well. Mario, Luigi, and Yoshi set out to rescue the princess and Yoshi's dinosaur friends, traversing through Dinosaur Land for Bowser and his Koopalings. To aid him, Yoshi gives Mario a cape as they begin their journey. So Bowser receives news of Mario and Luigi's approach and dispatches his Koopalings to dispose of them. After the brothers defeat the children and rescue Yoshi's friends, they eventually reach Bowser's castle where they fight him in a final battle. They send Bowser flying into the sky and save Princess Toadstool, restoring peace to the dinosaur land. Deep plot. Let's look a little bit about the development of this game. So again, Super Mario World, I always thought that it was Shigeru Miyamoto that directed this, but no, it wasn't actually. He was produced it, but Takashi Tezuka directed it, while Shigeru Miyamoto, so he was the original creator of the Super Mario and The Legend of Zelda, so he served as a producer on this one. Shigefumi Hino took the role of graphics designer. And Nintendo Entertainment Analysis and Development handled development with a team of 15 people, including 3 main programmers, a character designer, and so most of them have worked on past Mario games. So in a retrospective interview, the core team said Miyamoto wielded the most authority during development. Okay, so Miyamoto still had a pretty big hand in this. Okay. All right, because I was like, I know that this game was like, I want to say, and they might mention it here at some point, but I want to say that I think that it's been talked about that this game was like his favorite. So. But in an interview with Touch Magazine, then Nintendo president Hiroshi Yamauchi pointed out that sales of the Famicom were slowly dropping ever since its peak about 2 years earlier, and if they continued supporting it, players would eventually get bored and move in favor of a better quality games, which would be a dangerous situation for them. Super Mario World was the first Mario series game developed for the then upcoming Super Nintendo Entertainment System. As such, the team anticipated some difficulty in working with the new and more advanced hardware. According to Tezuka, the software tools were not fully developed, and the team had to go along with starting something new. Miyamoto acknowledged the team no longer had restrictions on certain mechanics, such as scrolling and the number of colors they can implement. As a hardware experiment, the team ported Super Mario Bros. 3 to the Super NES. However, it felt like the same game to them, despite the improved colors and sprites. After that, Miyamoto realized the team's goals would be to use the new hardware to create something totally new. Seeing the potential of the new capabilities present on the Super Nintendo, development of a fourth Super Mario installment began on October of 1988. So shortly after the release of Super Mario Bros. 3. Now that was Super Mario Bros. 3 in Japan. So about a month later, the team began to implement and test ideas that were impossible for the third installment due to hardware limitations. So this is where we get into Yoshi. So Miyamoto had wanted Mario to have a dinosaur companion in Super Mario Brothers, but engineers could not add such a character due to the limitations of the Nintendo software or the Nintendo Entertainment System. So the inspiration for Yoshi can be traced back even further. So Miyamoto designed the Green Dragon for the 1984 game Devil World, which shared many similarities with Yoshi. What's Devil World? Never heard of this. The Maze game developed by Nintendo and Intelligent Systems. Okay, so I'm looking at it here. Okay, I'll see if I can put up like a little picture of at least the box art to it there. Shows European box art. Okay, so it looks like this is back in 1984 in Japan, anyways. So interesting. Okay, but there was a green dragon on there that shared similarities with Yoshi at that time. But during the development of Super Mario Bros. 3, so Miyamoto had a number of sketches around his desk, including an image of Mario riding a horse. As development of Super Mario World progressed, the team opted to use a dinosaur land setting, so Tezuka asked designer Shigefumi Hino to draw a reptile-like creature based on Miyamoto's sketches. Hino originally produced a design that Tezuka deemed too reptilian and didn't really fit into the Mario world, so he encouraged the designer to create a cuter character. So Tezuka's speculated that Miyamoto's love of horse riding, as well as country and western themes, influenced Yoshi's creation. Huh, interesting. So reflecting on how he had created different melodies for Super Mario Bros. 3, composer Koji Kondo decided to reuse the same themes for Super Mario World, albeit in rearranged form. By doing this, he assumed players would be able to recognize the sample melodies while exposing them to new variations of music as they progressed. As Super Mario World was one of the first games developed for the Super Nintendo, Kondo felt overjoyed at being able to compose music by using 8 sounds at once. So that must have been exciting back then for composers for game music. To express the technological novelty of the new console, he used several different instruments, implementing them all one after the other in a title song. As development progressed, Kondo grew concerned over how people would react to his unusual combination of instruments, as he noted the use of more traditional square waves and triangle waves had gained acceptance with consumers. For the sound effects, Kondo decided to use a variety of musical instruments as opposed to square waves to emphasize that the game used traditional technology with a hybrid of new materials. It took Kondo around a year and a half to write all the music. Super Mario World it was first unveiled in the first Shoshinki event on July 28th of 1989 during a press release. While the technological advancements were found impressive, it was still too similar to previous Super Mario installments in terms of gameplay and graphics. Nintendo was forced to delay the release to late 1990 since the team struggled with the new console and its software tools, which were still under development at the time, refined their planned concepts so the controls would be more player-friendly, and the global chip shortage slowing down the Super Famicom's production schedule. The Super Mario World was exhibited again in the second Shoshinkai event between August 28th to the 29th of 1990. The demonstration garnered positive results by the public in terms of gameplay. So Super Mario World was produced during the console war, a result of the rivalry between Nintendo's Super Nintendo and Sega's 2-year-old Mega Drive system, which outsold the console and led to intense competition between the two, being the first time since December of 1985 Nintendo did not lead the market though it eventually overtook Sega. Sega's mascot, Sonic the Hedgehog, was seen by many as a faster and cooler alternative to Mario. And basically, again, like I stated before, right, I just strongly feel that competition really drives for companies to make more quality games, right? Because, when you have, here's Nintendo, right, trying to do Super Mario World, but Sega put out Sonic, and so that put Nintendo on edge, right? It's like, oh shit, these guys over here, right, are doing something pretty cool. We need to step up our game. Now, what's funny is in retrospect, and I think a lot of people can agree with this, is that Super Mario World, I think, has held its overall legacy, I feel, has been better than Sonic the Hedgehog's, the original one. Super Mario World is still considered one of the best games of all time. For Sonic the Hedgehog, well, beloved by many still, and it's a great game still. I just don't think that it quite takes that honor, though, the way Super Mario World can. I mean, even Sonic the Hedgehog 2, which was, by many people quite a bit better than the first Sonic the Hedgehog, I don't even think that game is on the same level as Super Mario World overall. It's I just feel like that's just not the case, right? Now, obviously, if you're a Sonic fan, then it's still, at the end of the day, it's still subjective. But considering just how incredibly well designed this game is, I feel like there's some truth to that as well too. But anyways, so Super Mario World was first released in Japan on the 21st of November of 1990, and under the name again of Super Mario World, Super Mario Brothers 4. It was one of the 2 launch games for the Super Nintendo in Japan, along with F-Zero. And then it came out in North America on the 23rd of August of 1991. And it also came out, there was a version of it that came out on an arcade cabinet so players can try the game before playing it. All right, so we already talked about the release here of it coming out on the Super Mario Bros. All Stars, and then on the Game Boy, and then on the Wii. All right, so its overall reception. So starting with the version that came out on Super Nintendo, so Game Rankings has it at a 94.44%. So back in the day, so it looks like these are publications that were out then. So All Game scored it a 5 out of 5. Computer and Video Games scored it at 96%. EGM gave it a 9 out of 10 for the 4 reviewers that it had. Famitsu Magazine looks like they scored it from 9 out of 10s, several 9 out of 10s, some 8 out of 10s, but also a 6 out of 10 too. Yikes. Game Informer gave it a 10 out of 10. Game Informer was around back then? Huh. JoeVideo.com gave it an 18 out of 20, but .com, the internet wasn't quite around the way we know it as it was back then, so not sure what that's all about. Bean Machines gave it a 98%. Superplay gave it a 94%. US Gamer gave it a 5 out of 5. Cube gave it a 9 out of 10. Entertainment Weekly gave it a B. Kotaku gave it a 10 out of 10. And Super NES Force gave it a 96%. And so it was Game of the Year in Nintendo Power. Seems to make sense, right? Since it was their own magazine. But again, so Super Mario World has sold 20.61 million copies worldwide, making it the best-selling Nintendo game. So in the United States, Super Mario Advance 2 for the Game Boy Advance sold 2.5 million copies and earned 74 million in revenue by August 2006. And during the period between January 20th and August 2006, it became the second highest selling portable game in the United States. So Super Mario World also received critical acclaim. In December of 2019, review aggregator Game Rankings ranked Super Mario World as the 78th highest rated game of all time with an aggregate score of 94% based on 9 reviews. So they didn't have a whole lot of reviews. Again, right back then, there wasn't as many like official reviews that we can go back to. Still pretty good though, right? Considering, that it's such an old game and it's still, I guess in the top 100 of all time as far as percentage goes. So the visuals and presentation were two of the most praised aspects. After its release, Rob Swan of Computer and Video Games noted that the graphics were an excellent example of what the then new Super Nintendo was capable of, while in the same review, Paul Glancy similarly remarked that the visuals were stunning and he was grateful for the game that it came free with the console. Because, that was a launch title for the Super Nintendo, so, that was quite the launch game. 4 reviewers echoed this in Electronic Gaming Monthly, but wrote that it took a little advantage of Super Nintendo's capabilities compared to other games available for the system. And now back then, right, and again, with any generation, right, but when we saw like a new game for a new system, it was like we wanted to be wowed, right? And this game didn't quite do that, at least, for the most part. Where some people thought that it just didn't really take advantage of the new technology. But let's see. Retrospective reviewers agreed that the visuals were still of high quality. Carn Bianco from Cube 3 enjoyed the relaxed visual style and praised Nintendo for keeping everything nice and simple, designing a perfect game for children. Let's see. And so one thing that critics also commended a lot on was the replay value and unique gameplay compared to older Super Mario games. So all the 4 reviewers of Electronic Gaming Monthly praised the number of secrets and diversity among its levels, expressing appreciation that Nintendo did not recycle assets from Super Mario Bros. 3. Yep. And Swan and Glancy enjoyed the addictive gameplay in the vast number of levels, while Dan Whitehead of Eurogamer lauded the divergence from linear platforming and asserted that Super Mario World was an evolutionary leap for gaming in general. Likewise, Goyan appreciated the option of being able to finish the game using alternative routes. Bianco wrote that it was one of the smoothest platformers in existence, while Thomas thought its masterful and innovative level design enhanced the overall experience. Navarro felt Super Mario World features some of the best and most challenging levels of the series, saying nothing about the game feels out of place or superfluous, however you say that. Miller considered the length its strongest aspect, while Oxford thought Super Mario World's gameplay could be both straightforward and complex. owing to the myriad of secrets. In retrospect, Sleeper believes the biggest achievement was the level design, calling it an unrivaled masterclass with constant sense of momentum. Yep, and that's really what it comes down to, right? It comes down to how well it nails the basics of it, the platforming, the level design, the secrets you can find on it, the overall look of the game, right? The feel of the game, all of that is just so well done. Um, but regarding to the audio, so the audio was well received by critics. Swan said it used the Super Nintendo's PCM chip to its fullest potential, and both he and Glancy agreed that the sound effects were mind-blowing. Thomas labeled the soundtrack another one of Koji Kondo's classics, but in hindsight remarked that it was not as memorable as his earlier work. Goyan praised the originality of the soundtrack and thought the technical contribution of the Super Nintendo allowed players to enjoy a globally magnificent composition. Both Goyan and Jason Schreier of Kotaku felt that rhythmic sound effects were important and helped to reinforce the atmosphere. So overall, the music was pretty well praised. Maybe some didn't quite think it was too memorable, but for the most part, I think it was pretty well praised. But then awards, I mean, so like Super Mario World received 1991 Game of the Year awards for Nintendo Power and Power Play. Many retrospective critics declared Super Mario World as one of the greatest games of all time. In 2009, a poll conducted by Empire voted it the greatest game of all time. In 2009, official Nintendo magazine named it the seventh best Nintendo game. In its final issue in October of 2014, official Nintendo magazine ranked Super Mario World the third greatest Nintendo game behind The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time and Super Mario Galaxy. Nintendo Power named it the eighth greatest game in 2006 and the fifth greatest in 2012. So they kind of bounced around a little bit there. It has been named as one of the great games by publications including Electronic Gaming Monthly, Game Informer, Retro Gamer, and GameSpot. In 2007, Retro Gamer named it the best platforming game, and US Gamer listed it as the best Mario game in 2015. In 1996, Game Master ranked Super Mario World third on their list of the great Super Nintendo top 10 list. And Total, I guess that's the magazine, named it the 11th best Super Nintendo game and said it was a contender for best game ever. So as far as the legacy goes of this game, right? So as a packing game for the Super Nintendo, Super Mario World helped populate the console and became the best-selling game of its generation. Shigeru Miyamoto, okay, here we go. So has said that Super Mario World is his favorite Mario game. In December of 2025, IGN named Super Mario World the best Mario game. Yoshi became one of the most important characters in the Mario franchise, appearing in later Super Mario games and in nearly all Mario sports and spin-off games. Yoshi appears as the main playable character in Super Mario World's 1995 prequel, Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island, which helped lead to multiple video games focused on the character. So Yoshi kind of became kind of its own character, really, with his own games, as we just talked about earlier, the Yoshi and the Mysterious Book game, right, that just came out a few days ago. Let's see. A Super Mario World clone, Super Mario's Wacky Worlds, was in development for Philips CDI device by Nova Logic from 1992 to 1993, but was canceled because of the console's commercial failure. In a poll conducted in 2008, Yoshi was voted as the third favorite video game character in Japan, with Cloud Strife and Mario placing second and first. Oh, wow. DIC Entertainment produced an animated series of the same name consisting of 13 episodes, which ran on NBC from September to December of 1991. Okay, we just talked about that. And Super Mario World has a large ROM hacking scene. Okay, yeah, so with fans using applications such as Lunar Magic to create levels and insert new graphics, music, and mechanics. Kaizo Mario World is notable for being featured in many Let's Play videos and popularizing the word Kaizo to signify hacks of extreme difficulty. So for people that like a challenge. In a similar way, Super Mario World is one of the 4 games whose assets are available in Super Mario Maker, a custom level creator released for the Nintendo Wii in 2015, and its port to the Nintendo 3DS in 2016, and its 2019 sequel. The latter adds new snow and nighttime themes for Super Mario World levels, accompanied by new music composed by Kondo. Let's see, a micro game containing 3 levels pulled directly from Super Mario World would later appear in WarioWare WarioWare Get It Together as a boss micro game in the Nintendo Classic stage. So, yeah, that's a bit of overall information on Super Mario World. Um, for me personally, the I remember playing it back then when I was a kid, and I liked it. But when Sonic came to the scene, I'm being a big Sonic fan, right, or Sega fan, I was like, nope, I'm all about Sonic. This is just another lame Mario game, whatever. But every time I did get my hands on Super Mario World back in the day, whether if I was playing at a kiosk or friend's house, there was always like this itch that I had to want to keep playing it. It just has like this certain addictive quality to it. It wasn't until much later when the game came out on the Wii Virtual Console that I finally started playing it. And so I got a little ways into it at that time, but then kind of fell off of it. I think I told a story before where I sold my Wii to my sister that had the memory card on there of my save game files, thinking that I could just take that SD card and put it on my new Wii that I bought later, and it would work, which it didn't, right? So then I kind of fell off on retrying that game until it came out on the Nintendo Switch Online, for, somewhat more recently on the Switch. And so then that's the version that I ended up beating finally for the first time, like really just a few years ago. And yeah, absolutely loved it. It was a lot of fun, and I can definitely see why this game is just so highly praised. There's really not a whole lot I can complain about this game. I mean, as long as you like platformers and you don't mind the Mario aesthetics, right? I went through a phase where, as a teenager, especially being a Sega kid, where for me, Nintendo was lame, Mario was lame. These games are for kids. Sonic is cool. At least he looks a little edgy, even though he's technically kind of still for kids. So that was my attitude for a while, right? But once I became an adult and all, I was like, whatever. These Mario games are fun. It's just um, I just went through a phase like that, right, when I was a teenager. And it is. It's just such a creative game. There's nothing really that it does wrong, and the levels are so colorful and well designed that it just hooks you. And that is the testament of a really great game, and for me, in my opinion. And that's why I think this game is really deserving of being one of the best games of all time. Because when you take it at its core of being a video game, it really doesn't do anything wrong. And it is not only that, it is so masterfully crafted where you can feel the love that was poured into the level designs in this game, the secrets you can find, all the colorful stages in the background and the ambiance of the game, the music to it. Is it the best video game music? No. Is it the best graphics out there? No. Right? But it has a nice enough aesthetic to it. But is it the best gameplay out there? As far as platforming games goes, arguably yes, right? And because it does that so well, and it has that Nintendo charm to it, you really have just um, one of the best experiences you can have as a video game experience, right? If we're talking about gameplay, right? Like a platformer, for example. And, with the 16-bit, and I think this is why the 16-bit generation is so special to me, because video games before this were pretty good, right? I mean, hell, we had the Mario games before this that were really good, right? But 16-bit, though, amplified that a little bit more. So when it comes to 2D gaming, I will always say that the fourth generation was as good as it got on 2D gaming for the most part. Obviously, the big focus of games at that time was 2D gaming. But then also you had Super Mario World, which was crafted by some truly genius people, and it's one of the best examples of a 2D game. And for that reason there, I think that Super Mario World is just one of the best examples of just how creative and fun video games can be. And for that reason, I wanted to give it a shout out and give it a little bit of love here, right, in this casual retrospective that I'm doing. And definitely for me, it sits as one of my favorite games of all time. On my personal list as of right now, let's see, I think I have it ranked at, it's in my top 20. I know that. Let me just check real quick here. Where do I have it at? Number 17. It's my 17th favorite game of all time. And as far as on the Super Nintendo, now the Super Nintendo was an amazing system, right? Because on the Super Nintendo, it's actually my, let's see, first, second, third. It's actually my fourth favorite game on the Super Nintendo, right? The top three are just being Final Fantasy VI, Chrono Trigger, and Super Metroid. I just love those games so much. But, again, Super Mario World is right up there, too, as one of my top games. So, again, that's a testament to, just how great that system was. But Super Mario World being a pack-in title, probably one of the most important launch games out there, and just an incredible game. you for some reason haven't played it, but you have any love for like platforming games and all, this is like a must play. Absolutely, you owe it to yourself to check it out. But that's what I got for this episode here. So that was fun doing this. And so this will change up the pace a bit from doing the previous, like the year in gaming retrospective that I was doing. So at the very least, I hope that brought some nostalgia on Super Mario World and a bit of information. And hopefully, at the very least, right, you'll give this game a shot if you haven't already. Or maybe it'll just make you want to play the game again, right, for the 100th time or whatever. But that's what I got for this one. My hopefully for next week, my plan is to do a similar style, but with Sonic the Hedgehog this time. So we had Super Mario Brothers as part of the console wars of the fourth generation. The other side of that was Sonic the Hedgehog. So we'll see what that blue blur brought to the video game industry. But until then, have a good one.